There's been a lot made of the Golden State Warriors' number 2 overall pick. Will they look to trade it and pair Steph, Draymond, and Clay, who are all in their 30s, with a win-now type of guy, someone that can stretch the floor, maybe a Miles Turner who they've been linked with? Maybe that wouldn't be a direct swap, but bringing in Miles Turner at a position of need as someone who can stretch the floor and protect the rim, that's been an idea that's been floated, something along those lines. Or will they look to bring in a young player? LaMelo Ball's been linked, Anthony Edwards has been linked, and a lot of people have said James Wiseman is the option because he's another center that fills a position of need. They think he can be the rim runner, he can be the rim protector that they need, and he can feed off Steph and Clay's presence around the edges of the court to make him dominate inside. But there hasn't been any suggestion that the Warriors are interested in any three of those top picks, any three of the players that a lot of people have at the top of the draft. Now, they're not consensus number 1, number 2, and number 3 overall picks because there just really isn't a consensus top 3 selection order in a draft like this, but those have been the names floated. But recently, the Warriors have said to be interested in Deni Avdija, the professional basketballer who just came off an MVP award in his league and is one of the most promising prospects in the draft. Most people have him as a top 5 prospect, with some having him right up the top, some having him towards the bottom of that range, but most people think he's one of the best prospects, and the Warriors might believe his decision making, his IQ, his ability to get to the rim, maybe come off the bench, someone that has played professionally as well. They think maybe all these ingredients translate to someone who can not only help them in the future, which they're going to need for a team that's aging, a team that's still going to be good for the next couple of years, but a team that's going to have to think about their future eventually. He might not only help them out going forward, but he might help them out in the meantime with his professional experience and with his ability that will gel with a number of players on that roster. Now, quickly before I go any further, if you could drop a like and a sub to the channel right now, that would be much appreciated. I make content like daily at this point in time, and it takes quite a lot of time to make these types of videos, as you'd imagine, and just liking it, subbing to the channel really helps out a lot, and it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Now, looking back at Deni, there's definitely the possibility that we have to entertain this is just a smokescreen. A lot of teams do this. What a smokescreen is basically teams are throwing a name into the mix, a name that might be viewed by, say, the Chicago Bulls at the 4th spot. They might be very keen on Deni Avdija, and they might want to move up to the 2nd spot if they believe the Warriors are going to pick him, and that means maybe they give the Warriors an asset of some sort and the number 4 overall picks. And so Golden State move back a couple of picks. They get who they actually really want, which maybe it's Deni, maybe it's not, but it's just throwing a name to the mix. It means people that are very interested in this player below them in the order are going to have to either take a chance that they're bluffing or give up their cards and give up an asset in return. So it's really a win-win for Golden State. Either they pick him or they get assets from it. It works either way for them to let the name out and let the speculation begin. Now, before we get any further into Deni as a target, because I think there's still a few more options that the Warriors could take with this number 2 overall pick, and let's talk about them. Let's talk about the trade options like I've mentioned, something that I think is very plausible that they still do make a trade, and I think they're actively looking for a trade. It's just if they don't make the trade, Deni might be the perfect fit for them, and that's maybe who they're interested in if that doesn't eventuate. I think there are some trade options. They are said to be interested in a wing. That seems quite certain. They've been mentioned with Vassell, maybe other guys like Okoro, Williams, and obviously Deni as well, a bit higher up the draft. Maybe a team like the Pistons, maybe you give up the number 2 overall pick. They're going to be looking to get LaMelo Ball, and they give you an asset or two, like a Luke Kennard, someone who's a capable shooter, a 15 to 20 point guy a night, a good playmaker as well, a pretty underrated player. He could come off the bench, he's proven that, and he could give you 15 to 20. He's a spark plug to maybe you want something else in return as well, but maybe they give up their 8th overall pick, which drops you back to a point where you can pick up a wing like a Devin Vassell, and you get a ready-made player in Luke Kennard who offers shooting and a bit of playmaking and can come off the bench and provide an impact. Maybe that's the kind of trade you're looking for. I think that's a better option than a lot of trades that have been rumored. I saw a trade that suggested they give up Pascal, Paul, and the number 2 overall pick for PJ Tucker and Robert Covington. Let me just repeat that. Pascal, Paul, and the number 2 overall pick for PJ Tucker and Robert Covington. That was a Warriors fan blog. That's not a Houston fan blog. That's a Warriors fan blog. Now, no disrespect to this writer. I'm sure he's had other takes that aren't this freezing cold, but you're giving up 2 guys. Pascal's already a role player, and he'll be even better going forward. Paul proved that he could be a role player going forward as well. And the number 2 overall pick who's going to be a potential star for a 35-year-old PJ Tucker, a 30-year-old Robert Covington, I believe, and yeah, that's it. You don't get anything else in return. These are good role players that would help the Warriors win, but you're not giving up all those assets for those 2 aging players. No, that's never happening in 100 years. the Warriors still have to worry about the future, and that's just mortgaging off your whole future for not much in return. If you're going to mortgage off your future, at least get something better than PJ Tucker and Robert Covington. I mean, they're good role players, but come on, let's stop that nonsense. There's been other rumors like Aaron Gordon for the number 2 overall pick. I wouldn't be doing that. Another good fit for the Warriors, I think. Maybe you could play small ball 5, but just the number 2 pick has to have more value. I don't care what kind of draft it is. I don't care. You should be able to find a player in the draft up the top of the order that has more value than an Aaron Gordon, than a Robert Covington, a PJ Tucker. There just has to be more value. Whether you take LaMelo Ball, who doesn't fit into the system as much, and just hope he pans out, that's what I'd rather do than trade him for someone that's solidified as a role player. You know what you're going to get from those guys, and it's solid, but it's not going to be great by any means. But say they don't pick Deni, there's a few other options in the draft. I don't think they're keen on drafting James Wiseman, but they might just see LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, who are seen as the 2 top picks. They might see them as good options just to get in terms of pure talent, and maybe they can look to offload them at a later date if they prove themselves coming off the bench, if they prove themselves to be worth even more after a year in the system. But maybe they're just interested in Deni, and I think there's reason to be interested in Deni. As I said, he's the youngest MVP in his league's history. He's a very capable playmaker as a secondary or even a primary ball handler. As someone who probably come off the bench for them, I see Wiggins as the starter. You've obviously got Draymond, Steph and Clay, no need to mention that, and he's not going to start at the 5 unless they decide to go real small ball and go Draymond to the center spot, which maybe they could do that in a lineup. I don't think they'd do that starting off the game. I could be wrong, but I doubt that. So maybe that could be a small ball lineup that they'd be interested in doing later in the season, later in games. But I think he's a Sean Livingston maybe kind of guy, someone that can play make, someone that can get to his spot, someone that can get to the rim. I'm not saying they're direct comparisons in terms of how they play, but I think in terms of the impact, maybe that's the kind of impact you could expect from the get-go, and he's probably got more potential to be better than that. But in terms of just starting off, that's probably where he's at. Someone who can come off the bench and provide that kind of impact, and can also stay with the starters if you're playing a small ball kind of lineup. So I do like the idea of Deni at the number 2 overall pick. Like I've said, I'm not sure if it's a smokescreen. I'm not sure if they're really interested in trading. That's what I think most teams are interested in doing, particularly a team with all of your star players are over 30 years old. But then it's the Warriors. They've proven to make great decisions in the draft time in and time out. And maybe they think Deni is just going to be that kind of guy that can propel their franchise forward and can just help them from the get-go. Okay, look at it this way. If you think Deni's going to be an all-star, I don't think there's many all-stars, if any all-stars, no all-stars on the market that you're probably going to get for the number 2 overall pick, which is crazy to say, but just teams don't seem interested in offload. Every team's looking to compete, and just doesn't seem like there's going to be a market in this draft as well. So if you think Deni's going to be that guy who can make a solid impact this year and even more of an impact going forward, I think maybe they just do it. Maybe they don't even trade down in the order. Maybe they take Deni with a number 2 overall pick and they go from there, because the Warriors are a team that have the Timberwolves pick next year. They're a team that could bounce back straight away. I know a lot of people will hate to hear that, but the Warriors aren't going to be going anywhere even when Steph and Clay retire, which I think is quite a long way off. I think Draymond's might be towards the end of his career, closer towards the end of his career, because his body's been a bit bruised. He doesn't have the same kind of skill set. He relies more on physicality, more on his ability to move laterally very quickly and just be aggressive defensively. Steph could be 40 knocking down threes. Like, there's no limit to what Steph's going to be able to do when he's older. We've never seen a player like this before, and we've seen a lot of shooters. Kyle Korver's still around the league at 40. It's really up to Steph to decide when he wants to retire, because he could go till 40. He's twice, 3 times, 5 times. Let me stop disrespecting Kyle Korver, but yeah, he's 10 times the player Kyle Korver is. So if he wants to go to 40 years old, he can do that. So there's no saying he won't. But you're still going to need someone that can push them through. And maybe Deni's that kind of guy that they can pick. I think Deni's a good pick, as I've said, for all those reasons. For the steady head he's got on him. He's someone that's played professionally. He's someone that fits into their system as someone who can play make. He does have a concern over his 3-point shooting. I have to mention that. For a Warriors player, yeah, I know it's ironic. He's not a good 3-point shooter. But maybe they think they can mold him into that kind of guy. If there's any team that can do so, if there's any players that can help him, any coaching, you've got Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson on one roster. If there's any time you're going to improve your shooting, that's going to be the time. He hasn't shown signs of being a great shooter even from the free throw line, so maybe he's never going to be that kind of guy, but there's a lot of players in the league that are still very good without being great shooters. It's not the be-all and end-all, particularly when you've got the best backcourt, best shooting backcourt of all time. He can fill in just fine. That being said, let me know what you think the Warriors should do with the number 2 overall pick. I'm still torn. I don't mind the idea of Deni. I think he'd be a great fit, but also I wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors are throwing his name into the hat, knowing teams like the Bulls are interested and trying to get a better deal for themselves. That's a very smart thing for the Warriors to do. That's a thing all the top teams do. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they take him as a means of propelling forward and just as a means of trusting their talent scouting, because why is there any reason to not trust them? Just as recently as last year, they picked up Eric Pascal and he was a great steal later in the draft. And we know what they did a few years back when they had Steph, Clay, and Draymond. So maybe they have more faith in their ability to pick out great players coming through the draft than any other thing they can do. And maybe that's what they do. I wouldn't mind that as an option either. As always, if you did enjoy the video, a like would be greatly appreciated. Sub to the channel. If you made it to the end of the video and you haven't subbed, it would be greatly appreciated if you hit that subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Yeah, as I've mentioned, what do you think Golden State's going to do with that number 2 overall pick? Let me know down below. Let me know what you want to see in the next video. Other than that, I'll catch you next time. Have a good day. Bye.